episode 63 with Adam Schafer. Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Chase Chewning, and this is your weekly source for inspiring content from people who are putting a purpose to their passion and truly living a life ever forward. This is Ever Forward Radio. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm coming to you still from California, actually back in my roots. I'm back in the closet recording this intro, just like the old days. In our old apartment, we had a decent-sized little walk-in closet that had a door, and I would close it, set up shop, and that was my studio, my poor man's recording studio. So here I am, back in my roots, back in the closet in the California house. Man, wrapping up the weekend, what a whirlwind, what an incredible ROI on opportunity and networking this trip has been for me. The whole goal, like I mentioned last episode, was to come out for the Fitness Business Summit 2018 media coverage, which initially drew me out west, but took the opportunity, flew out a few days sooner, and got to make some even more great connections. Got to explore LA, got to see some friends, some family. And this has just been an amazing trip for the podcast and for honestly just some personal rejuvenation. So for everyone that I had the pleasure of connecting with, friend, family, old friend, new friend, professional networking, all of the above. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much to the entire Bedros Keuilian, Craig Ballantyne Fit Body Bootcamp team for having Everforward Radio on site, interviewing these guests. Guys, you are not going to want to miss this. What I think I'm going to do, because we have so many interviews, they're a little bit shorter, but we have so many. I think we're going to do a little special edit. We're going to package this up and share this as a special mini-series. So stay tuned. You're going to hear a whole hell of a lot more coming down the line from Everforward Radio, from the people that are the movers and shakers in the fitness and business space right now, okay? Some really passionate, energetic interviews, really on point with what is going on right now and what is about to happen in the fitness, nutrition, health, wellness worlds. Just forefront leaders, and I can't wait to share with you what they shared with me. But don't worry, that's coming soon. Until then, we're going to be talking with Mr. Adam Schafer. Today's interview is with one of the three gentlemen from Mind Pump. You may recognize that name because I was actually a guest on their podcast about a month or so ago. All three of them have been on Everforward Radio late last year, but now I'm going through and just getting to know each one of them on a unique level, a deeper level, getting their insight and what it is, their specialty, their area of focus, what brings their passion to the table when it comes to Mind Pump, but also as an individual. So today we're getting started with Mr. Adam Schafer. Such a great conversation all around these relationships with ourselves and the people that come in and out of our lives, and just really being able to recognize which ones we're supposed to keep, which ones we're supposed to let go, and which ones, we don't need to get so attached to, because we are in a certain season of our life, and so are they. And they are here to serve us in that season as well. We are them. But then we dive deep into his origin story of how he got started in the fitness industry and how he got to know Sal and Justin and create this other incredible platform and content creation and podcast. If you don't know Mind Pump, please pause right now. Go check him out. Check out their podcast, Mind Pump Radio. Everything they do, YouTube, content creation, blogs, programming, but definitely the podcast. Incredible. Just listening power. Their studio is unreal. Definite podcast goals. All right, so guys, I'm coming for you. I'm gonna co-sign off your entire studio. All right, let's jump into this week's iTunes review. This is coming from user John Stavrakis, and it simply writes, motivational. This was a great start to my morning. Always love hearing the story behind the brand. Everforward will always be more than just a brand name, and will continue to motivate and drive others as much as it motivates you guys. Keep it up, guys. Mr. John Stavrakis, thank you. It is so much more than just a brand. There is a story behind it, and that is what keeps us going. It's not just keeping up with the Joneses, trying to make sure we come up with a cool logo or a name that would just hopefully appeal to the people, but it's the why behind it. It's the story behind it. It's our entire life's purpose, and we just feel that it holds so much value and is so powerful. That's why we have to share it with you all. We have to have this podcast. We have to offer these Everforward coaching services. We have to have Everforward apparel, because there's just no right way to make sure this message gets out to everybody, because we all know not everyone needs to buy gym clothes, not everyone needs a coach, not everyone needs to listen to a podcast. But the more ways we can just share what we have experienced and what we know to be our truth, and these other stories of people that have helped us along our way, that's what it's all about. So I'm glad you pick up on that, John. Thank you so much for the review. Thank you so much for the rating. Alrighty, guys, before we jump into the interview, I just want to share with you, this episode is brought to you by the homies, the good friends, the entire team over at Bear Performance Nutrition. BPN is hooking you up with the audience here. If you head over to bearperformancenutrition.com or bpnsups.com, whichever is easier for you, and every supplement, anytime you need it, every time you need it, whether it's whey protein powder, pre-workout, BCA intra workout, a pump product, or their incredible In Focus. This is one of my favorite morning pieces. I use this all the time to just get in the zone. When I'm waking up, if I'm taking my morning time, my morning ritual, and whether I'm reading, I'm journaling, I'm cranking out some emails, and I need a little bit of that boost. I got my water in me, I got my greens powder in me, of course, BPN strong greens, but this stuff, you get so dialed in. So In Focus, one of my favorite products from BPN. Like I said, anytime you need it, every time you order it, 10% off. Just simply throw code Everforward at checkout. All of this will be linked down in the show notes below. All you need to do is just tap it, find what you need, throw it in your shop cart, and get on about your day, okay? So BPN, thank you guys for being such a proud partner here with Everforward Radio. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into this conversation with Adam Schafer. Well, Adam, welcome back, brother. Well, I should say, welcome you for the first time. We've
one-on-one here.
We've done the flip flop before.
Yeah, we don't have to let Sal in on this one. It's just you and I. I've always got to fight for time with him. Him and I are always wrestling back and forth who gets to talk. When we run these solo interviews, it's nice.
Yeah, man, it was such a cool idea of, of course, connecting with all three of you. Hell, that was back in, I think, like October, when I had the Mind Pump crew on Everforward Radio, and then I was back in San Jose back in December, I guess it was. Such a privilege and honor to be out with you guys. It was such a cool insight into how you run your operation and create your content. And man, you guys are no joke. It's just from sun up to sundown, man. You guys are in the studio, filming, recording, just speaking your truth in so many different ways. It was such a cool experience, man. Thanks again.
Thank you, man. You're a solid dude, and we definitely have a lot of mutual friends. It says a lot about your character too, man. So you're good people.
Yeah, I guess people can lie to my face for so long, but once they actually start giving me referrals, hopefully I'm doing something right?
Right, I think so. You got that great radio voice too, bro. So it's that also helps.
Yeah, man, it's such a great thing. Talking with you guys, conversational wise, it sounds great. I mean, you, Justin, Sal, the whole crew, you guys sound so good. Your studio is no joke. And I got to say, man, you definitely taught me some things. I have upgraded some equipment and some processes since being around you. So some passive learning has happened since then, my friend.
Oh, awesome. And I think it's cool when people do that. I know some people have the scarcity mindset where, oh my God, copying me for doing this. And I think that's so funny. We're just down in LA doing some interviews, and I'm talking to somebody who's kind of younger. He's in his mid-20s like that, and he's venting to me about all these people that are copying what he's doing. I'm like, dude, that's not something that you should be upset about. If anything, it just moves more people into your space, and it's a compliment to you that you're doing something well and right. I've never understood people that get like that, that get this scarcity mindset where they don't want to share their knowledge, mm-hmm. They don't want to share their information, they want to hoard all their stuff, and it's just, I think that only gets you so far. Even if you've proven a model and been successful, I think eventually that all kind of comes down on you if you don't have that more of a open mind. And I always appreciate those that I have met because really we wouldn't be where we're at today if I didn't have the opportunity to meet and learn from so many other great interviewers and great podcasters that are out there that shared that information with me. And so I have a lot of gratitude for people like that. I don't know if you listened to the last episode that we just did recently with Jordan Harbinger.
Oh, Art of Charm. Yeah, no, I haven't got there yet. Yeah. The last one I was listening to was you guys had Mr. Greenfield back.
Bro, you gotta listen to Jordan's episode. You'll really appreciate it because one of the things that was exciting to get into with him. So if you don't know his story, I mean, Art of Charm is huge podcast. He interviews Larry King Live and Tony Hawk and Shaquille O'Neal. Like, I mean, he's fucking big time, right? He's been doing this for 9 years now, built himself a little empire, and it's completely been ripped out from underneath him. And he's got right now they're in the middle of splitting the business up between him and his partner,
Oh
and it's
no.
legal. Oh yeah, it's kind of a mess, and he's been through a lot. And we hadn't seen him in a while, and he'd come back in and shared his story on our podcast, and it was cool because it was the first that that were fans of his had really heard the story. And he's starting his new one now, so he's completely starting over from scratch.
No shit.
And yeah, so we got to dive into what that's like. Also, the things that he's learned from the first 1,000 episodes that he's done with Art of Charm, and that what he's plans to do this time. And so, being another podcaster, it gave me a lot of insight. In fact, it was great for us to have done that interview right before we went down to L.A. because I really felt. We all kind of leveled up from that. It's amazing. It's just like sports. I love using sports as an analogy, and there's so many parallels with business. And when you're constantly kind of hanging out with, maybe people that you teach a lot or that are kind of at your level, and then you get to play with somebody who's way better than you are. It's crazy how that elevates you, it's just like how it was for me in sports. Like if I played basketball growing up, and I loved playing with the older kids. Now I used to get my ass kicked, but that's okay. I saw how fast I got better.
Put you in check.
Right. And I think that when you're always playing at a lower level, you can get kind of stuck at that level. And so getting to hang out with Jordan and just the skills that he has in interviewing, it really makes you appreciate the art of conversation, the art of interviewing. And it's much more than just, a couple guys getting on the mics and just talking some bullshit. Like, how do you present really good information or story tell really well and navigate through that with and for an audience, So I think he gave a lot of really great insight. I think you'd appreciate it.
Definitely have to catch up on that episode, man. I remember first hearing Jordan's work, being introduced to him way, way back in the day when I first actually got my first car was satellite radio. I used to listen to this Sirius talk show called, back then it was Maxim Radio with these two guys, Covino and Rich. And I don't know if Jordan was on Sirius or just kind of like in that space of, guy entertainment, women's sports. They had him on and kind of presenting the art of charm. And they had him on in the light of how to basically be a confident guy, how to go out and be social and talk to women, the whole art of charm, for yourself. And yeah, I mean,
Right.
That's been at least 10 years ago, and he's just been doing that ever since. So I think that just goes to show, like you were saying, man, I always tell people drive is the most contagious thing in the world, and just surrounding yourself with people who are on your level, below your level, and way above your level is going to be the most common denominator of how you can really measure your success, how you're progressing through life, and just, having that sense of awareness of like, okay, who's in my space, who's doing what, how can I better improve myself? What are people doing that I'm not? And, what can I teach others below me?
100% agree, man. I just did an interview recently about that, just how important it is to evaluate your inner circle and the people that you spend the most time with. I think somebody asked me, Adam, if you could go back and tell your 14-year-old self some sort of advice, what would you give him? And I think the advice that the universal advice I think I go back to is that, I wish I picked up on how important it was to move beyond certain relationships and continually be reaching and searching for people that feed my flame. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important. And I think as we get some of us, so I feel like there's people that I know that are much older than I am that still haven't pieced that together. And when you look at their lives, they tend to always be the victim role, and they got a lot of shit constantly going. They just seem to attract a lot of shit. And then you see a lot of the younger generation, and I too was like this, where, I made a lot of friends in high school and growing up through junior college. And these friends were mostly athletes and buddies of mine that we had, history together, and we became really close and bonded. But as we started to get older and grow in different directions, I think I held on to some relationships longer than I should have because we were bonded by this, competitiveness from sports. And I love that. And we had a good time, or maybe we were into video games or something at the time. And so I was hanging out with those people a lot. And, when I started to really evaluate our relationship and what it really provided for all of us, I thought, for the most part, it's really not healthy. We get together, and because we're competitive guys, we tend to talk shit to each other. And there's always seemed to be one guy that's the butt of the joke. And we, because we took turns and rotated who we were making fun of, it just seemed like it was the normal BS that boys do or whatever. But, I noticed that as we got into adulthood, that some of this competitiveness that we had with each other that drove us to the young men that we were at the time was also holding me back from growing beyond that. And that was just because everybody was competitive to the point where they wanted to see you successful, but not more successful than they were. And it is, right? And I think, as young men and women, that when you're at that age, it's hard to see that, this is Jimmy or Tommy or Justin, and we go all the way back till sixth grade, and you guys were well, maybe in sixth grade you guys had a lot in common, and now that you're 24 or 25, maybe things are a little bit different. And those of you that are really growth-minded, I think it's important that you the earlier you piece that together, I think the faster you begin to level up. And so now I'm at a point in my life where, if you're not somebody who adds value to my life, and adds to my flame, then I have no desire really to hang out with you, because all that ends up doing is making me take steps backwards. And that may seem a little harsh, but I mean, I think you're only hurting the other person too by staying in relationships like that are technically unhealthy. But those are hard conversations to have.
It's so funny. When I was there in person, you guys were touching on things that were so true at that specific point in my life, and you're hitting on another thing right now. And this is addressing or taking a step back to just have the awareness of whom you need to address. These people that are in your life for a certain season, being able to figure out what is the common denominator of why we hang out, what brings us together. Are we just weekend friends? Are we just sports friends? It's having this sense of awareness of, okay, who's in my life that it doesn't matter what we're doing, where we are, they're there. I get the same level of this relationship no matter what we're doing, where we're doing it. It's funny. My wife and I were having a really late night conversation this past weekend over some people, man, in our lives, some friends, some, even family members, and just acquaintances that, we're literally measuring, okay, what value are they bringing to our life? What expectation are we having of this relationship that clearly is not being reciprocated? And it sounds harsh when you say it out loud, but it's just truth, and it's being honest, and it's just recognizing that, hey, maybe I'm pouring into this cup more so than somebody else, and maybe even vice versa. But what's going to be the best for both of us? What's going to provide the most longevity? And it may just not be a no. It's just not a not right now.
Well, I bet I didn't even think about it getting into this conversation, how much more challenging that probably is for a man like you who is, has been in the service and probably built some brotherhoods.
Oh,
with
man,
some guys.
so true.
Right, that you've been through. So you have an even probably deeper loyalty to some people that potentially may not be moving on with their lives or growing. And that would be fucking hard, man. I think back to those hard conversations and relationships I had to move on to. And it was hard for me because we went back to fourth grade, or I spent the night at his house many times, but I couldn't imagine being on the battlefield and that guy, depending on that guy to be there for my back, and having that type of a bond with somebody. And then also potentially being okay with maybe we move away from each other at one point. That would be fucking hard, man. That would be harder than anything I know that I've had to deal with. And I know those have been very hard conversations that I've had to have in my young adulthood. So yeah, fuck, dude, you've probably gone through that even more than I have.
I mean, I could have a whole other spinoff series of these people that come into your life that you think are never going to go anywhere because of what you went through together. But That's just it. It's the hard, real truth of, hey, this scenario, this event, this place, this thing might have been the same for both of us, but it doesn't mean we process it the same way. It doesn't mean that I took out of it the exact same thing that you took out of it. And, sometimes that's okay. and they're going to be with you for a certain time period, maybe a year. I mean, I have a couple guy friends that come to mind that, they were part of my life, part of my, that period of my life, that season of my life, the military, for a decade almost. And now it's like, I couldn't even tell you the last time we spoke. And it's not really a bad thing. It's just because, hey man, we served each other then, we don't now, and that's okay. Let's drive on.
I was just having this conversation with one of my childhood best friends, and we have a mutual childhood best friend who I don't really talk to very much. And him and I were inseparable in high school and some of our early 20s. And, for something happened to him at one point, and a lot of it I attribute to he was most likely to succeed. He was the quarterback, the point guard, averaged 3.5 plus GPA. I mean, everybody liked him. He was a super popular kid, and he was a very good friend of mine. But he also got kind of stuck, man. He went through a hard time for a couple years. He had a death in the family, kind of resorted to doing drugs for a while, and then he just got stuck. He got stuck in our hometown, still living at home with his parents in his 30s. Or his dad. At that time, his mom had passed when he was high school. That was part of what sent him off. And, for a long time, we all kind of still stayed around and would hang out and do a lot of things. But as we started to get older, everyone kind of, started pursuing their goals and kind of growing from each other. And it was a really tough thing for me to let go of, spending a lot of time with him and talking to him. And part of the reason why I did was it got to a point where he began to lie a lot and build these stories because, every time we'd all get together, all of our friends would be like, oh, yeah, no, I'm working on this new project over here at work. Oh, I just got this promotion. Oh, I'm having a kid. Oh, I just got married. Everyone had these things that were going on in his life.
And they're so far away from that.
And he's so far away from that, and he's not really moving. So then he began to make up stories. And I mean, we were friends for over 15 years, and this guy was not known for lying, at least not that I recall when we were kids. And now all of a sudden come these crazy stories that started to just build, and lies build on each other. And we got to a point where I was just like, this is not only is this unhealthy, but I'm feeding it by entertaining it, by listening to him, And I couldn't call him out because every time I call him out, it just dig us deeper into a bigger lie.
Drove a bigger wedge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
There, man.
Right. So that's a fucking tough one, man. It's really tough. But that being said, we were just having this conversation this past weekend. I said, he's still a brother to me, man. I still love him, and if and when I get married, I would still consider him as one of the boys that I would love to stand up in my wedding. It doesn't.
Nice.
So I try to explain to people that, because I've had this conversation before. Well, just how do you do that? I mean, these people have done so much or been for you. It's not you're not breaking up like, I don't ever want to talk to you. Don't ever see me again. We need to go different directions. But sometimes those people you're spending a lot of time in your life with them, and a lot of that time is crutching a relationship that's really not taking either of you anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so it's less about breaking up and saying, I'll never speak to you. And it's more of kind of phasing or moving on beyond that, like you said, season in your life, and moving on to the next season. And that doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of respect and love for that guy. And I hope that he kind of puts it together, and maybe he will one day. But I know that now my time, it's better spent personally growing myself and surrounding myself around other people that feed my flame.
Like I was just talking about in the beginning, one of the people that I always listen to and keep in my life, my podcast mentor, so to speak, Mr. Sean Stevenson over on the Model Health Show. He actually was in town here in DC about a year ago. My wife and I went to his live event, and one of the people in the audience asked this question that her and I will never forget. And they were on this path. They were making themselves better. They were trying to get back in the gym, eat better, basically just, level up their personal life, their fitness, nutrition, all the above. And they were like, all my friends, most of my friends, my family, they just don't care. They're not supportive. They're not on track towards the same goals that I am. It's like, how do I get them on board? How do I make my environment more motivating and conducive towards my goals? And he said, just stop. You can't. You need to tell them and tell yourself that because I have so much love for you and respect this relationship so much because of what we've been through and who we are, friendship, bloodline, whatever, is that we're on a different level. Yours isn't better than mine. Mine isn't better than yours, but we're on a different level. And because I love this relationship so much, I'm going to wait for you. I'm either, going to wait until you can meet me at mine, or if I come back around, I can meet you at yours. But it's just recognizing of, hey, is this serving both parties? And like we're saying, man, sometimes that's really hard, because sometimes they are family. Sometimes they're these people that have been in your lives, like you're saying, for 15 years. And, it feels like a breakup, but it's not. It's just, hey, we're just not, it's not me, it's you kind of thing. We're not serving each other. But
I think it's recognizing that a lot of times those relationships are serving the wrong thing, right? So like they're doing sort of service, but a lot of times you're feeding into your insecurities or you're feeding into the things that you need to move beyond. And I think a lot of the fear that keeps us from moving on from those relationships is just simply that, is that we're afraid. We're afraid to let go of that, and I think that it's such an important part of growing. And I don't remember when the first time I read that or heard that from somebody about, you're an average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that's not just that's not just a financial thing. It's not that you're an average of their income, although that can be true also, but it's just their personalities too, what they bring to the table. And you got to really pay attention and reflect on, like, okay, is this who I want to be? And if it is, and if it isn't, that I need to move on. And great book for that too. Crucial Conversations, I think is a great read, and it talks. There's a lot of business stuff in there along these lines, but I think it applies to even like personal relationships, how important it is to have these crucial conversations. And I think the older I get, the more I realize that you can never be too honest. You can never be too straightforward. And I think as much as everybody likes to claim that, oh yeah, no, I'm a straightforward guy or I'm honest, but a lot of times you're lying to yourself. Mm-hmm. And radical honesty is a true tough practice to practice all the time. And, as hard as it is, the more I do it, the easier it becomes and the better I am at it. And I feel it's so much easier to sleep at night when you feel that way, when you get off your chest exactly how you feel and how you think. And I think the first few times you do that, you probably don't articulate it really well, but the more you practice it, the easier it becomes and the easier your life becomes, because you feel so much better when you get that shit off your chest.
Well, Adam, I think we've just set a new podcast record for the longest introduction without ever actually introducing the guest, man. 25 minutes. We've been.
Do you formally? I don't remember if you formally intro or what. I mean, we always intro after. That's my style. We just get on and fucking talk. Haven't talked.
Yeah, man, it's so easy to connect with you and so many people like you. So it's so easy just to hop on and start right into conversation. But I'm speaking with Adam Schafer. You might recognize his voice and content from Mind Pump Media. They've got one of the most brutally honest out there podcasts. I think their whole goal is to introduce this raw fitness truth into the content world. So Adam, man, I know we've had some great conversations so far, but maybe from my audience members who don't know you, who are you and what do you do, and why are we talking, man?
Oh man, I'm just another guy who's been in fitness for a long time. I'm going on 16 years that I've been I was a personal trainer first, so in my early 20s, I started off as a personal trainer. I was only a trainer for a short time before I moved my way up into management and leadership. And I spent most of my career doing that, developing other fitness leaders. So that was a lot of what I did for a large company. So at that time, 24-Hour Fitness was the first fitness business to ever reach $1 billion in evaluation. And so I had an opportunity to work for one of the greatest fitness companies during one of the best times to be a part of it. And so did Sal, and so did Justin at one point. Although the irony is that as well as we all kind of act like we know each other, Justin and I have some history, because I hired Justin back in 2006.
Oh, so he used to work for you.
So Justin. Yeah. So I hired Justin. Justin was fresh out of college, moved from Chicago back over to California, and he came in. And I hired him and another guy at the same time. And I tell the story. I have told the story before on our show a long time ago, but I actually didn't think Justin was going to be that good. And and part of that was because he wasn't the typical mold of a personal trainer. Like, he came in and he had this kind of football jock kind of look, which that's typical and normal for a personal trainer. But he was really kind of quiet and reserved. He wasn't super charismatic. He wasn't a talker. He didn't have sales background really. Now he was a waiter, so he definitely had some communication skills for sure. But I wasn't sure about him. But he was smart. He was really smart, and he was eager to learn. And I felt like, okay, well, and I had another guy at the same time that I hired that was like the opposite of him. And if you would have asked me, I would have put my money on the other guy being a better trainer long term. Both of them ended up being really good, but Justin became exceptionally good. And I found out later on that a lot of what made Justin exceptionally good were a lot of my weaknesses. So the things that made me a great trainer were the characteristics and traits that I had. The ones that Justin was very successful were the ones that I lacked in. So we made a very good team, and it was shortly after that I promoted him to be my right hand or my assistant, and we did that for a couple of years together and set some great records and goals and broke a bunch of stuff for the company that was cool. And then it was time for Justin to get promoted, and he got overlooked a couple times, and he looked at me one day and said, "Hey, man, I love you, and I want to stay here in this company, but I don't think they see the same thing that you see in me, and I'm going to go off and do my own thing." And I had nothing but respect for him and said, "Hey, I would do the same thing too, man." So he went off and built his own little business on his own and did very well, and we remained in contact. I stay in contact with a lot of especially high-performing trainers that I have mentored or hired and trained. And so even though we went different directions, I stayed in touch with him and kept that relationship. I left not too long after that, maybe a few years later, to pursue the cannabis industry, which I had no fucking idea what I was getting into because I didn't know anything. Yeah, totally, right? Especially being a guy. Now, my back history on marijuana is I didn't like it. I wasn't pro it. I didn't experience it as a kid growing up. My first experience with it was as a young adult, and when I did, I had a terrible experience. So I was kind of anti it, but then I was also aware of what was going on. I saw the writing on the wall that, this medical marijuana wave is coming. And at that time, there was none of it in the Bay Area. And I had a client who, told me he wanted to meet one night and said that he had an opportunity for me that I couldn't pass up on at least listening legit to him. And at that time, right. So, and I knew I had this client for over a year, so we'd built a pretty good relationship. And we meet for dinner, and he tells me what his plan is. And at this time, I'm in my late 20s. I bought my house by the time I was 22. I've got a 401k. I'm making six figures. I'm in the industry that I love. So I'm a pretty happy guy where I'm at. I don't as much as right, exactly. I'm growing up, right? So I'm going through all that, and I really like, the health and fitness industry. And even though I didn't like the turn that the company had made, I couldn't complain. I mean, I really made my own schedule. I made good money, and I loved what I did. So I always said that if someone was going to get me to leave that place and do something else, it'd have to be an unbelievable opportunity I just can't deny. Well, this guy slides me over a piece of paper and tells me how much money I should make the first year, and I literally put my notice in the next day. Yeah, that's exactly how that went down. And that's a whole nother podcast and story of events and shit that went down. But for the most part, I had a 2.5 year hiatus from fitness while I was starting up two of the first medical marijuana clubs in the Bay Area. And so I was a part of all that. And it was only a few years into it where I missed fitness a lot. I had reached a point financially where I thought that, I always wanted to be. And so as a young kid growing up that was poor, I always thought, and I shouldn't say poor because I know there's always people out there that had it way worse than I do. But I do know what it's like to be on food stamps. I know what it's like to be evicted from a house. I grew up in 9 different homes growing up. So by no means am I saying that it was just so hard. We still had a roof over our head. We still had food to eat. But, we were no stranger of struggle whatsoever. So, anyways, I left the marijuana industry because I was just kind of over it. It wasn't what I was into. I loved health. I loved fitness. I loved the people that were into health and fitness, and those that were into cannabis. And this is an overgeneralization, but for the most part, a lot of them are not health and fitness minded type people. Sure, there are some people that smoke cannabis or have used medical marijuana that are, but they're a very small percentage. And so I got to a point where I was like, man, this money that I made didn't change my life the way I thought it was going to change my life. And at that point, I was in a position where I pretty much could do whatever I wanted to do. And I thought, you know what, I want to pursue fitness again, and I want to do it in my own way. And I've created a cushion for myself that I don't have to have, a paycheck every week to help pay the bills. And let's go after, doing this the way I want to do it. And at that same time, you have Taylor, who works for us now, who I happen to be playing basketball. I'm in a men's adult league, right? That I'm just a rec league. And I meet this guy, Taylor, who's a young kid. He's in his early 20s. And it's the first person I've ever met who has built a social media business and makes, 6 figures plus. Now, I had heard this around this time. And mind you, I'm a kid who I don't give a shit really about. I did MySpace for a few minutes and then I was like,
we've all been there.
I kind of was weird.
We all had our top 8.
Right. So I did that we did that for a minute. And, and then I kind of grew out of that. Like when Facebook started to get really popular, I really didn't care about Facebook. So I never even had Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that shit. I didn't care about it. But I'm also a business guy, and I love to read business. And I remember hearing about people and stories of these people that were building these social media businesses. But I hadn't met anybody yet. So I'm really nothing stopped me in my tracks, because the way I looked at it, it's like, until I meet somebody who's actually done this, like I'm not going to get distracted by this potential, industry that's exploding supposedly. And then I meet this kid and he's doing very well for himself. And he tells me that he built up his Twitter following first, and then he built up his Facebook following. And he's got this successful little 6-figure business. And all he does is he started off by flipping sneakers. So those that are listening that are into like J's, I'm a sneakerhead, so that's how we connected. And, he would buy and sell, these rare shoes. But what he was known for and what he did that was so brilliant, that was a model that a lot of people were doing at this time. He flipped it on its head and became the guy who put people together that were looking for sneakers, but then he didn't charge a fee for it. And that was what really flipped the model on its head, because that's what everybody did. That was the money. The money was, you find a guy like me who's not willing to wait in line for a rare pair of shoes, and I'm okay paying, $200 over the retail price. And you make the middle, he makes the $100 to $200 because he's got the shoe, or making that connection, right? Where he didn't do that. So what he did was he built a very loyal network of, shoe people that wanted to get shoes like that, and knew that he had the best shoes for the best price. And then from there, he pivoted into his business called Supreme, which was just a brand. And he kind of logo flipped, very similar to what Supreme looks like. And, he was known for like connecting all these people. And now he created this little brand where he had T-shirts and hoodies and keychains and air fresheners. And, the guy was killing it. And I was just so fascinated by this kid that had very little experience in business, that had built this business. And it was this light bulb that went off with me, because right at that same time, I'm transitioning out of marijuana to come back into fitness. And I'm not 100% sure where or how I'm going to do it. Now, since I was 22 years old, I've had multiple side businesses always running. So at this time, I've got a successful boot camp business that's running all over the Bay Area. And I see what this kid's doing, and I'm like very fascinated. I'm like, you know what? If this kid can do this, I can do it on the side while I'm managing these other things that I'm building right now. And so it was at that moment that I turned on Instagram. So I turned on Instagram with the intentions of, modeling what this kid had done and building some sort of a business off of that. And so that's really the origin of my piece of how I fit into Mind Pump, because I was doing that at the same time that Sal was with Doug, and they were putting together MAPS Anabolic, which is our first program that we ever released. And they were just about to really get into internet marketing. So they had been hanging out, they had built the program together, and they were just starting to go live online. And Doug was responsible for all the back end work and the sales funnels. And Sal and I had known of each other because we both worked for 24 and we both were record holders and top sales performers in the area. And so we knew of each other, crossed paths, but we never really hung out. And everybody always told me, like, you got to meet Sal. You guys will hit it off. You're just like each other. And people were telling him the same thing. And so he ends up messaging me on Facebook and just saying, hey, man, I just wanted you to take a look at some of the things I'm doing, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it. And, so many of my buddies are telling me that you and I got to do something together. And by this time, I'm already off and running. Like, I've got the boot camp business, making good money doing that. I'm kind of building my little social media presence. And I'm talking to Sal. And we connected. We actually connected a lot on the cannabis talk first, because he was the first fitness guy that I knew that really understood the benefits of like CBD, and because he had his story with his mother-in-law. And we started talking a lot about that. And then this program that he had, and he shows it to me, and I'm like, bro, this is the message that people need to hear. Like, so many of my clients. And so right away, I knew what he had created and how brilliant it was, and how counter it was to the message that had been given by the masses already. So that was really how we got together, was Sal and I going back and forth about what he was building, and then me sharing with him what I was doing on Instagram and on social media. And I was telling him that, listen, you got to get on Instagram. You got to get on this social media thing, because I love your idea. I love where you're going, but we'll be able to move it and sell it through our social media platforms if you get on there. So it took him a long time before he finally got on board on the Instagram thing, but I finally got him that way. We finally all met together. When we met together, it was just fireworks right away. Everybody had a lot to say, and we all agreed that, man, I wish I had this when I was 20 and coming up in the fitness industry. So a lot of the beginning of Mind Pump was just kind of scratching our own itch. Was like, man, could you imagine having a resource of guys like us who have all this experience and knowledge, different backgrounds. We don't agree on everything. But we present it in a way that's non-biased, and I would love, and we're halfway entertaining along the way. So I was like, "Fuck, man, I would love to." I thank you, man. But that was really the secret sauce, was that we weren't just informative, because at that time I'm following podcasting, and I see the podcast out there that I'm drawn to, which is the kind of nerdier side. So I shout out to Lane Norton. He was one of the first podcasts that I listened to a lot. But first of all, his podcast sounds like he's talking in the bathroom. Secondly, he's interviewing all doctors and scientists, which for me, that was entertaining or interesting for me, because I'm learning, and I'm learning in my field that I enjoy. But I'm thinking, like, if you're just an average guy if this was me at 17, I would not be listening to it. Like, it would just be over my head. It would not draw me in whatsoever.
Yeah,
the format is not my style. So
I can't relate.
Right. I couldn't relate to it. So I could see those podcasts, and there was lots like Lane's that are very informative, right? And science-based. And then there's the other side, where I saw some of these guys that had blown up that were providing, and they're fucking bros, but they're entertaining, and they're good looking, and they have this social presence that people are listening to what they have to say or tuning into them because of whatever, but it's not because of how brilliant they were. And so there was this huge disconnect, I felt like, from, people that could market themselves, that knew how to get themselves out there, and then the really good information. And so we really were a blend of that, where it's like, we're going to educate people, but we also want to entertain. Like, this is not going to be a pure, like, you're going to school every time you listen to Mind Pump. Who the fuck wants to hear that every day, right? Like, we need to give people just a little bit of information, so they feel like every time they hear the podcast, there's a nugget in there for something, right? There's something in every Mind Pump episode that you should pretty much walk away and go, like, that was a solid fucking tip I never thought of, But then at the same time, a majority of it was like, oh, I laughed my ass off, and I couldn't believe this, or controversial, or you want to argue or debate something we said. Like, that was what I thought was missing in podcasting, and we all agreed. We all said, okay, let's try and do this. We knew we would suck, when we first did it. So I know you're over here tooting my horn and shit, but if you listened to 700 episodes ago, I thought we were pretty chaotic and awful.
To my older episodes. Oh man, I do the same thing. I'm getting some episodes echo on my end. Can you hear that? I'm getting some echo on my end. Can you hear that?
Oh, you sound okay on mine. Doug, can you throw on your headphones and make sure you sound okay?
It's getting a little bit better. There, I think it's gone now. Yeah, we're good.
Are you?
Yeah, I was saying that
Okay.
when I got started, I was like, oh man, I'm the fucking man. I got this amazing $50 mic. I've got a super fast internet connection. I got carpet on my floors. I'm going to be making this incredible podcast. I go back and listen to episode 1 and hell, even like episode last week. I'm like, God, Chase, you suck. But
You know what? It's crazy though, guys like you though that have that ability to go back and do that, because some people are so narcissistic.
you think you're doing something good,
that.
and you're like, that's good enough. But then if you're not going back and just, definitely appreciate the hard work and effort you are making, because even if it does sound like you're in a bathroom or it's super high level, whatever you're putting out there, I promise you, if you're listening, whatever content creation you're into, it's going to resonate with somebody. But yes, there is always room for improvement. And if you're not going back to your previous work and just evaluating yourself, not necessarily heavily critiquing, because you can just get stuck in a rabbit hole doing that forever, but just looking, okay, this is what I'm doing really well, but how can I improve upon it? That's the best way to kind of like just self-coach your process.
Well, yeah, it's really
So true.
It's really about your goals too. Like, so I was just talking to Jason Phillips this morning, and he's, kind of been in my ear about potentially starting a podcast and what I thought. And, I was telling him, like, well, bro, you're a brilliant guy. You've got a ton of information. I think you podcast really well, so you've got what it takes. It really just depends on what your goals are. Like, so I think there's different ways to start a podcast, and understanding what you want to get out of it, I think, is important before you go into it, and understanding your why. Because some people want it to just complement their business, which there's nothing wrong with that. If you already have a successful business, I think Jason's got a very successful business already. Having a podcast that complements that, I think it only just creates more value for what he's already killing it and doing a great job with. For us, we had some crazy lofty goals. Like, I'll give you a little inside stuff that's happening with us potentially this year, which is, we're actually debating dropping Raw Fitness Truth off the title
and going with what, or just leaving it Mind Pump.
Yeah. Just leaving a Mind Pump. And that was really when we first started, Mind Pump, we went back and forth on the name and how we wanted to name this business. And what we didn't want to do was we did not want to pigeonhole ourselves into talking about the same thing, because we all agreed that, okay, the first goal was to dominate the health and fitness space. Like, let's dominate where we consider ourselves experts. Like I am by far not an expert in a lot of other fields, but I feel like between the three of us, we could consider ourselves an expert in health and fitness. And so let's dominate that space first and make a name for ourselves. And then from there, we wanted to pivot out to the big C, which is everybody, everyday listener that just like you would tune into a radio station 5-10 years ago. We want to mimic more like what a radio show would be like for somebody that would just want to hear every day, and so you see that happening right now. We're going through the transition, so you can pay attention to how we're starting to segment the show with current events and topics like that at the beginning of the show, and then we transition into the fitness Q&A. I don't think we'll ever abandon fitness completely, so just keep that in mind for those that are listening that are fans
put down
of
your pitchforks, people.
We're not going to. Yeah, right.
This
I know
is
there's
bullshit.
some people like, what? You're where I get my fitness. Yeah, right. So we're not going to get rid of it. All we're going to do is start to kind of segment the show. So because we've already done enough studies on our audience and see that there's a good split of people that tune in for just the banter and bullshit that we have at the beginning, which tends to be more of the entertaining and the lack of education, just good conversation. Right. And then this back half is the more sciencey and fitness related questions or personal growth type stuff. So I think that we're not going to eliminate or change or do anything. I think we're just going to get better at segmenting that show and then just becoming this more broad brand of Mind Pump besides just focusing on just fitness. And you see that too with our interviews. We just got back and we were with Drama from Robin Big, and we just had Matt Kibbe, who's a Liberty guy. So we're getting into politics. We got Jerry Robinson coming in a couple of weeks, which is a economist. And so we're doing a lot of things like that now, where we're branching out into other topics. And so far, the feedback has been incredible. I mean, people are wanting to see us go that direction. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, and this is a key to success, people. Listen, what Adam's talking about is just not being afraid, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning of, which is really common in this industry of the fitness industry and content creation, is not being afraid of collaborating, not being afraid of expanding out of what you know or what you think you know, because out of fear of losing your audience or out of fear of feeling like you're being imitated or people are copying you. I mean, what I connected with the most with you and Justin and Sal and the whole Mind Pump crew is just that you have this like hive mentality, and I am all for the belief that you can be good on your own, but man, you can be so much greater with someone by your side. You can be so much greater by keeping your like-minded community with you in that process. And I think that just goes to show that you guys, you're not limiting yourself. You're not operating out of fear because well, what if they say something, they're going to get more credit than me, or what if they know something more than I do on a particular subject. But, that's the season, like we're talking about, the seasons of life. You have solidified yourself in this fitness world. You guys have shared so much, but you know what? There is so much more to that to life. And your audience is definitely recognizing that. They're not just eating, breathing, living fitness nonstop. We're all human. You got to have the humanization aspect if you want longevity.
Oh, agreed. On the other side of fear is success. And I think that when I was a trainer early on, I remember seeing other trainers so scared to let like another trainer train their client or know how they were writing their program or what diet you had them on. It was so competitive like that. And I was just the total opposite. If I learned something, I was sharing it right away. Because what I found out really quick, that if I learned something new and then I applied it and then I turned around and taught it, I really quick became a master at it. But if I took something that I heard or learned and then I tried to hoard that information, it would take me a really long time to evolve. And so it became a formula for success for me early on, and people just couldn't figure it out, because when I got into leadership and I'd have people that were close to me that were clients that I had for a long time, and maybe I'd go off on vacation, and then I'd ask my trainers and I would spread them out. Like, oh, here, you train this client, you train this one. And they'd be like, you really want me to train your client? We're going, aren't you afraid you're going to lose them? And I would laugh and I'd say, no, I'm not afraid of that. And if they do, that would be a good thing, because one, that would tell me that I've got an incredible trainer, or two, it would be a reflection on I wasn't doing a good enough job. And so either way, it was a win for me. And I said, that's the attitude you need to have, is that you can't be afraid. You can't be afraid to lose like that. In fact, when you fail like that, it's really a win, because someone's letting you know, like, hey, dude, you could have done better. Obviously, that client, as much as you thought they loved you, as much as that you thought they were loyal to you, they left you after one session with another trainer. What the fuck does that say about me? What is it?
Yeah, what are you doing wrong?
And if I'm being completely honest with myself, I could probably sit back and go like, well, I got kind of lazy. I wasn't giving them, they've been following the same program. I hadn't given them anything new. I hadn't been challenging them and stretching them. And so it was a way for me to level up and grow and just be like, man, I could get better. And I still have that approach now. I mean, we were with someone just this past weekend, and I'm sharing everything that I know about podcasting. What do you want to know, like, that I've learned in the last 700 something episodes? I'm an open book. Ask me, I'll share that with you. And I'm just giving all this information. They're just kind of looking at me like kind of sideways, like, man, this is incredible information that you're sharing. Thank you. And I'm like, yeah, man, I really pass it on, dude. Don't hoard it. Don't take it and feel like you got the upper hand now because you get to sit down and talk to me for, a few hours about this. Take that, apply it, and teach it and get better, and hopefully the next time we see each other, you've got something you can share with me and teach me that you've learned along the way. And I think
return the favor.
Yeah, right. I think people that have that mindset grow so much faster and are more successful. And that's part of why I'm so lucky and blessed at Mind Pump, because the men that I work with are all that way. Like, everybody cares more about the success of the team than they care about their individual success. It's not about anybody individually. Everybody is trying to prop each other up. And it's hard to find that. It's hard to find that many people that are like-minded like that. But when you do, you hang on to it, because those type of people really do feed your flame.
Yeah, man, that's why I was so appreciative. And, kind of like we were just talking about when you guys invited me out, you're like, hey, you kind of sent the open invitation. And I was like, I'm going to take you up on that. Like, is this a trick? Or like, you actually kind of like, share with me your podcasting secrets and just, have me in the studio. And, so firsthand, these guys really do practice what they preach. And I knew just being in that environment because you guys, you're on, full disclosure, you guys are on a podcast level where I really want to get to. Like, I love what you're doing, your content, your reach, just your engagement. I'm like, I want more of that on this platform. So what better way to achieve that, or at least learn possibly how to do that, than to just be in their presence. So man, I flew across the country, just hung out with you guys during that day. So like that fed and nourished that itch I had in this one thing that I'm doing right now. And then the second half of my trip, man, I went down to LA and hang out with a few other much bigger social media people and online coaches. I mean, you've had Amanda on the radio, Amanda Bucci and her boyfriend, Brian DaCosta. Right. They're good friends of mine. They're doing a lot of similar things on the same level and in a lot of ways on a much higher level. So that whole trip for me was just a way to just surround myself with people that are doing amazing things, all very unique, but definitely things that I'm trying to grow in my own life. So man, I've talked to Amanda, I've talked to Brian, and you guys now for sure that, that trip alone of just being around what you're doing and learning from you and having you guys just open up and share what you're doing was just so beneficial for me. I mean, like I said, I'm literally using much different equipment now. I've changed a lot of my practices of how I record and just going into conversation with people based upon that experience. So that's, you have to pay it forward. And if you're in it for the right reason, like you're saying, going in with what goal, what is your specific outcome? And if it is to truly provide this level of content and inform the masses and change people's lives and change the world, you can't keep that to yourself.
Right.
You can't. You have to share with everybody else.
100% agree.
Damn, man. I know we're coming up on the hour, man. You got a couple minutes?
Oh, yeah. We're in no hurry, dude. We don't have anybody until I think later this morning, like around 11 or so. So you're good, man.
Awesome. I have a client call in about half an hour, but I just want to make sure I'm not holding you guys up.
Good.
Yeah, man. So what is next for Mind Pump? I know a lot of people, when I shared my interview that I did on your podcast, they were like, oh man, I'm listening to these guys for years. And I think anyone who is familiar with your content can probably guess, what the next episode is going to sound like, or, the banter and stuff. So how are you guys staying fresh? You just talked about maybe a shift in the name, but, how are you moving through this possible next season in the Mind Pump world?
There's a lot going on right now. There's a ton going on, probably more going on right now in Q1 than we ever have in the history of this business as far as change, growth, and movement. Like we for sure have, and I think this happens in all business, right? You tend to, if you got a good model and you have a good plan, you know your why, you kind of take off and you're going and you're doing your thing, and then eventually that climb eventually kind of levels out, and then you kind of figure out, okay, why am I here? And then why are we not still growing? What do we need to do? And then you
what's next?
Yeah, what's next? And then you find that, and then you're up the next level, and you just kind of keep doing that. And where Mind Pump is at right now, complete transparency, is I've only been here one other time with a business that I've built before, as far as the size of it. And we now have about 9 employees, and the business has now reached into the 7-figure range. And, we are now at a point where, it's no longer a little business that I built that's really successful and provides some money for me and my family. We have a company, and, with a company comes a whole new game that you play. And, I am by far no expert at that whatsoever. And I'll be the first to admit that, it's a different monster running a 6-figure business, which I'm very comfortable with doing. I've built multiple businesses that have achieved at that level, and I've failed at a ton of them too. So I've got a ton of reps in that range. But now when you start moving into the 7 and 8 figures, and the amount of people and processes that are going on within the company, it's a motherfucker. And right now, what we are not short of is visionary ideas and directions. We have tons of those. I mean, you've got 4 men with brilliant entrepreneurial minds and visions of greatness. So we're not a lack of that. But where we struggle with is the systems. And so this year is a big year for us to prove that we can agree on a couple goals that we're going to achieve, and then go to work and put the systems in place. Because if we ever are going to step away from this model and either one, sell it or allow someone else to run a lot of it, and we just stick to podcasting, then we're going to have to build some very good systems. And so this year, a lot of what Mind Pump is doing is trying to get more organized and systematic about what we do. And an example of that is we set a goal at the beginning of the year that we would get 4 program releases this year. And the goal is to drop minimum one every single quarter. And the real goal is to get from 4 to 6 a year. Now, we haven't done more than 2 in a year before, because there's a lot of work that goes into building out the programs that we have created. And it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money.
And you guys do some long-term programs. It's like the whole year, right?
Yeah, so we have some that will last. So our super bundle is designed for people to follow it and have programming set up for them for the entire year. But even our smallest, shortest, cheapest program, you're looking at least 12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks that you'll have programming for you. So all of it's very detailed. They got videos to connect to it, and you're inside a portal where you have access to all the exercises, the blueprints, and so we spend a lot of time and money into creating a really high-end product. And this is also why we can get away with selling our training programs at a much higher rate than the average person. So the kind of going rate for a online fitness program is only $27 to $57. Well, we don't have a program cheaper than about $117. And
Good for you.
Yeah, and a lot of that is just because we put a lot of time and effort into the program. So anyways, those tend to be our biggest revenue drivers, and it's important that, and we have plenty of ideas of things that we want to create and put out there this year. We're beginning to get, like, we did like a broad stroke of the general population programs, and now we're getting to more niche, so it's more specific. So, we released one coming up in this following month. We just did HIIT. We have another one that we're partnering up with Robert Oberus, who's the strongman, and we're going to do like a strongman type of program. So we're starting to move in that direction. And what we're trying to prove to ourselves that, okay, how fast can we turn one of these out? How quick can we shoot all the video, create all the blueprints, get everything together, wrap it, get it to our marketing team? How long till they can build all the back end on the email sequencing and all the Facebook advertising? And how long does it take us from stem to stern on one of these projects, and becoming very systematic about doing that? So that's a big part of where Mind Pump is. The other big piece I would say that's unique and different this year is, like I was saying, about the segmenting the show. And we're really in the middle of that transition. So if you're listening to like the last 10 episodes and going forward, you see there is a little more thought put into it. In the past, we used to get on the mic just like you and I did, and then whatever came to mind and we just talked about, and we were never lack of words. And so that was how we did in the past, where now we have each challenged each other to bring a current event, something that is going on today or yesterday, that we can talk about. And nothing is off limits. It can be completely taboo. It can be these third rail type topics. It can be whatever we want. Just bring a current event. And so we have now been pushing in that direction. Now, the future of that and the strategy for that, being transparent, is to be able to segment the show and advertise and market differently. So you've got your back half of the QA, which is health and fitness related. And we obviously, the people that are really drawn to that are people that are wanting to be healthier. So the Organifi, the Thrive, the Four Sigmatic, the sponsorships that we have with those companies makes a lot of sense for the commercials, the organic commercials, to be around that segment of the show.
I just finished my Four Sigmatic mushroom coffee, actually, like halfway through this, man. This stuff is so good. I've been working with them for a couple of months now. I love their stuff.
Nice plug right there. So that's what
shameless.
So we plan to kind of, and we're also, the goal, and you're going to see that. In fact, today we have an interview with someone who we're working with now, and you're going to see Mind Pump really move into other brands, things that have nothing to do with health and fitness, and that will probably, those types of advertisement will be better paired with like the current event. So segmenting the show and doing these things. Those that may not understand what the strategy of that is, aside from appealing to our audience, we're really giving our audience what they want, because that's what people tend to be tuning into, either the beginning of the current events or the end with the qua. And getting the advertising, now we have double the spots that we can open up within the show. And so it's really like two shows built into one by segmented. So that opens up a much larger revenue stream for advertising that we already currently have. So that's something that, if we execute this year, we should double the revenue in advertising that we did the previous year. If we get to 4 programs, even though the goal is 6, if we get to at least 4, that's double of what we did last year, which should double that revenue. And so, the year before, the company had 150% growth. So at the rate that we're going after Q1, we could potentially do 200-300% of goal from previous year. So a lot of that is where Mind Pump is at now, is trying to become more organized, more systematic, more plug and go as far as what we do. The last year or so was a lot of fun and enjoying the growth and the process, but now it's like, okay, it's time to set this thing up to where it's turnkey. And I think that we're starting to make those steps. We've made some big progress already this first year, and pretty excited to see how the rest of the year unfolds.
That's awesome, man. You guys have definitely worked your asses off for it. And I think one thing I can highlight in what you're talking about is that it's okay for people to change from one, shtick, one niche group, and go on to the next thing. Because especially if you're a podcaster, if you're a YouTuber, if you're a social media, whatever, if you're a content creator in any way, shape, or form, if you stay in one lane, your entire existence, your entire social media, entertainment, internet career, you're making 2 false assumptions. First is that you're always going to be the same person. But more importantly, more crucial to your business and your longevity and your relevancy is that your audience is always going to stay the same. So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, man. You have such a core group of diehard fitness people, and they're like, yeah, give us the science, Sal, spit whatever study you just memorized, or, give us what's going on in the fitness and nutrition world. But also, man, how many more people can you reach and help and serve by just incorporating something as seemingly random as a current event, tying that into everyday human life existence, and I'm sure, you can trace it back to, this could have been alleviated if, maybe the person was working out or ate better or did whatever, but those 2 false assumptions are only going to hurt you, and they're going to hurt your career for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah, but you guys are definitely moving forward, and Adam, that's what we're all about here, man. Moving forward, ever forward. I've shared with you the background and the story behind what those 2 words mean and the whole premise for this podcast, man. So how would you say Mind Pump and Adam Schafer and everything that your whole team is doing over there, how does this help your audience? How does this help anyone listening right now to continue to live a life ever forward?
Well, I think much of the message that we put out on Mind Pump is exactly that. A lot of it is personal growth. Even the way we present our fitness knowledge is not us. We're always checking ourselves about our sounding dogmatic about something, because I feel like a lot of people in our space tend to do that. The new study comes out, or you and I, before we got on air, we're talking about buddies and people that we know that are following the ketogenic diet. It's like, because it's the fucking fad right now. Like, everybody is doing it.
It's the new.
Right. And I think that, I don't think that's a smart strategy. I think that the better strategy is to share with people in the audience the benefits of all these things that we're learning about the body and how science continues to evolve. So I think sharing that and then teaching them to have perspective, and then to not get dogmatic about one approach. So I think just that in itself is a message of personal growth and always moving forward, because you see this a lot where somebody tries something, whether it be a type of training program or a nutrition plan, and they see results. In fact, they see the most results they've ever seen. And then all of a sudden they become married to this idea. And I think that's where people get in trouble, is when they fall in love with a modality or a way of eating, and then they become very dogmatic about it, to where they won't try anything else and they refuse to do anything else, or that's their go-to every time. And, a lot of our message is to help people understand, well, what is it about that diet or what is it about that training modality that you did see the best results, and then teach them how to unpack the science of why that is. And then I think when you understand why you saw those results from that way you were eating or from that way you were training, I think this gives people a better insight on it's not so much this made up name like the ketogenic diet or CrossFit or Orange Theory, or these are all fucking made up names. Really, there's science behind why that exercise or why that way of eating is showing you some sort of a positive response. Now the question is, what is it? And then how do you apply that new knowledge that you found to your life going forward, at the same time not get caught up in the religion of nutrition and the religion of exercise, which I think is very, very predominant in the industry right now. So much of Mind Pump's message is that, and is always about moving forward and growing and being open to being wrong. I mean, in 700 something episodes, absolutely there's been things that I have said that I know that I've had to come back out later on and say, hey, we said this back in episode 300 or whatever, and now science is showing that that's less true and this is more true, and, presenting that and being okay with presenting that. I think 100% that's what Mind Pump's, main goal and message is. So it very much so aligns with, Ever Forward and the thought process that you have and the message that you give on your show. So, if you tune in there, you can always get that.
Awesome, man. Adam, thank you so much for your time today, man. It's been awesome connecting with you. Again, seriously, thank you from the Ever Forward podcast area waves to, from DC to San Jose. You guys you practice what you preach. I love the message. I love the method in which you do it. Thank you again for the opportunity to come out and connect with you guys, because it has certainly helped level up how I approach this venture. It's my world now. It's my full time, this and the coaching. So I definitely learned some amazing things from just being around people doing what I want to do and at a higher level. Thank you all so much for joining me again this week. I truly hope that you have enjoyed this episode and its message. If you have found value in Ever Forward Radio, I would greatly appreciate you subscribing to the podcast, as well as taking just a few seconds and leaving it a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. This is the best way to make sure our message continues to reach others. Thanks again, and I hope that this content helps you live a life ever forward.